Welcome to The Night Temple, a podcast about art, memory, and inspiration.
Welcome to our digital conference panel.
For the Music and Visual Media Conference 2026.
Yeah, it's so great to meet you guys and see you and be able to talk with you today.
Yeah, we're here with Rafael Rivera, Pierre, Charles, and Savan Kotecha. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you so much. And we're talking about composing and songwriting for TV and the processes, and you guys kind of cover the gamut there between you with the score and songs as well. So and one of the interesting things too is just how diverse your palette is, and yet you know how stylistically things come through so strong in the shows that you're all here to represent.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and we wanted to talk a bit about your current shows. So there's so Carlos, you know, you're in season 5 of Hacks, so you've had like a long time to kind of build that palette, and I'm interested to know kind of just the process of that. You know, in the early seasons, there's a real kind of genre, like almost 70s kind of sound to things, and it kind of, as it goes on, you know, we kind of develop with bringing in orchestral elements and all those kind of things. So I'm interested in that kind of process across the 5 seasons.
Well, man, to keep it as brief as possible, before I get bored, and I'm just who's gonna tell the story, so I'll keep it. The one interesting thing about this one is that a lot of times when you get to do these, you get to have the unexpected thing work itself out. And the fact is that the show ends with these two orchestral big moments. Each of the last few episodes have big orchestral moments, and that was actually by accident in a sense because another orchestral moment never happened. And if you follow the show, one of the characters played by Paul Downs is a big fan of Xena the Warrior Princess. I don't know if anybody remembers the TV show.
I remember it.
But that was like and he growing up he was like a super fan, and he ended up having this thing that was going to be the Xena montage. And I started working on season 1 alone, like, and I've had the team, but you know, it from season 2, I brought one of the team along called David Stahl, and he became my co-composer since season 2 through 5, right? So, one of the things that we were asked was to do a Xena the Warrior Princess montage, and they got a hold of the music because they had the rights to it through Universal or whatever. And all of a sudden, we said, "Yeah, but if we're going to do it, we got to do it with orchestra." So we got to get approved to do orchestral recordings for a scene that never happened in the show. So we started working on this big montage for Xena the Warrior Princess that they were going to do, and they decided to can it, which says a lot about their integrity, you know, because no matter how big a fan, it just wasn't working. That extra bit wouldn't have worked. But suddenly we had the orchestral stuff working itself out, and it's like, well, we have these last moments, you know, where Deborah kind of goes and does this big show, and we were able to do it. So what started as, like you said, 70s kind of inspired music, a la Randy Newman, a lot of bass line heavy things like Toto, and that Hold the Line is a song that comes to mind. A lot of songs in the 70s had really great bass line hooks, right? Down, da na na now, da da da. It's all about the bass, or you know, ba da da. You know, that kind of bass line movement that people like Randy Newman would use. That's sort of what Deborah's theme was, because she's an older person on her way out. And so these themes kind of that started very much in the band setting got to grow organically along with the show. But it's the funnest part is when it's organic and serendipitous other than planned, you know?
yeah.
Because I like to get the British accent going and start saying, yes, of course, I always intended, you know, but we got lucky.
Yeah.
So that's the longest or shortest answer I can give.
And I mean, again, just, you know, from that talking point of diversity or growth or expansion,
Hmm.
you know, with Pierre, the Sean Combs, it's such an unexpected palette for Sean Combs. You know, it's so like there's so many stunning string arrangements in it, and yeah, but it's sort of a cultural counterpoint to what you'd expect.
Yeah, for a show that's got hip hop all through it, you know, like all through the historical basis for it. But you've got this kind of different. You kind of almost feels like you avoided hip hop as a genre and just kind of
went to the emotion in this orchestral landscape. It sort of plays out like a almost like a drama thriller, like a horror to certain degrees sometimes. Yeah, how is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, early on, Alex Stapleton and I, we kind of immediately were like, okay, let's not make a hip hop score. I mean, she came to me with a vision right off the bat. She's like, I'm not looking to create like a New York like 90s boom bap hip hop score. I really want to, you know, create something that's a bit left of center. Um, something that's recognizable, but still has this kind of undertone of like, uh, like unease and unsteadiness because ultimately we're focused on a character who kind of his whole career like kind of puts on this circus
Yeah,
um and there was like this public performance surrounding the events that happened, in his career. And, I wanted to kind of, Alex originally she was like, okay, I want the score to kind of take ideas from, Succession and White Lotus because we're talking about, power and also like, a kind of like loopy funhouse of, this interesting character who, is sinister, but also is, in a way has some ingenious to him and also created this, this kind of empire of hip hop in New York and abroad. And so I ran with the idea of a circus because that was one of the first things that she mentioned.
right.
And the scoring process was different than most other scoring processes. It was, we're working to, with documentaries, it's especially docuseries, there's a lot of cuts that are moving around, so many different storyline shifts that had to happen, restructuring of each episode, all the way until the 11th hour, like, all the way until, hours before this aired.
yeah.
And I made it a point to record a bunch of instruments that I could actually like kind of pull from as I wrote the early themes, and just actually use those instruments to sample with. And through like a sort of serendipitous way of like finding out how this, like figuring out what this score is ultimately going to sound like, I realized like as I was sampling like these flutes and all these world ethnic flutes that I had my friend Ashley Jarmack record, and my friend Brian Kilger recorded a bunch of percussion. We spent like 5 to 6 hours in the studio, just recording all types of metals and drums and everything, and cello and violin. As I was sampling these, I realized that there's this weird sort of like undertone of like intonation that was occurring like as I was playing each instrument through a sampler. And that sort of became the whole basis of the score where I could, you know, develop this like orchestral side, but also have these pads and all these like random perks that would percolate throughout, and then also create this like uneasiness and unsteadiness that would represent ultimately Sean Combs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really effective, really, really effective.
It's cool, but hearing you talk about that, like it's also it's funny because it's like yeah, you're saying you avoided hip hop, but there's something about film scoring that is like mechanically like hip hop, the sampling and the repeating and the combining of genres and
And
combining of
narration.
elements.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, I still like took from a lot of hip hop elements, throughout. There's obviously scenes where hip hop was really front and center. And so I used a lot of 808 on like underneath the orchestral elements.
Yeah.
There's a whole part of the series where, we're examining the relationship and sort of the animosity between the East Coast rap and the West Coast rap, Tupac and Biggie, and how Sean Combs, found himself in between all of that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways that I incorporated the hip hop elements without, being too on the nose with hip hop.
Yeah. And Savan, your melodies for Nobody Wants This as well, they take you to this extremely intimate place, which is sort of the opposite angle, in a sense of this sort of sweeping orchestral stuff that we're talking about here with the Xena and all the samples and the layers, and then all of a sudden, we're talking about you and what you're working with, and you create that equal impact through intimacy, and and beauty and the beauty of that, and what was the process or the decision making behind that, and choosing to take those instruments and that angle.
Yeah, I mean, it was a kind of stars aligned situation where, I when I first started writing songs, it was always, when I was a teenager, I would sort of hide in a room and write songs after episodes of Dawson's Creek. That's how I would write songs. I would always like write from like the character's point of view.
Oh,
Um,
dude, that's so
and
cool.
and so I always wanted to do stuff for TV and film, and I've, done a fair amount for film in the middle of like my, pop career. And I love Nobody Wants Us the first season. It's the exact show that I love. So I was harassing everyone that like, let me do something for Nobody Wants This. Let me do something. And finally, Manish called me and said, okay, we have this big breakup scene that we want a song for. And I, of course, knew the characters, and I was like, okay, spoiler. And he was like, don't worry. No, you can't tell anyone, but it's a breakup scene. Um,
Wow.
and, coincidentally, when I talk about stars aligning, I was sort of in the middle of a long partnership, creative partnership that was sort of had run its course. And I was going through, in a sense, a breakup of my own, of a collaborative partner, and with all love and all of that. But like, and, I had Louis Capaldi coming to town, and he was going through something in his personal life that was sort of in a similar situation, a breakup full of love, but and appreciation, but it's just run its course. And I had, when they called me about this and I was going through what I was going through, I had this line, I don't hear melodies, I just hear words. So we
Wow.
started structuring, I had this start of the melody that I don't hear melodies, I just hear words. And we just started writing it from there. Just a breakup song about when you still love that person, you don't know why it's not working, it just isn't, or you wish you could change things. And the whole bridge, so hold me tonight like it's the last time before we both find someone new. And it's that sort of feeling. And it was kind of literal to me because it was, I was talking about a collaborative partner, but we tapped into something that really touched us all in the room, and we carried on. And it was, as far as instrumentation, yeah, I'm not a great piano player. I always have like melodies in my head a cappella, and then I'll collaborate with someone who's a better musician than me. But everyone who is a better piano player is trying to play the piano. We just couldn't get it right. And then I was like, okay, just let me try because I'll play it poorly, but at least I'll play it like emotionally.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and that's what happened, that's sort of the sonic bed of the song.
It's
Uh,
beautiful.
and then we were so lucky that Dermot Kennedy came to sing it. He actually christened my new studio, and it was the first thing we recorded there. So,
Oh, beautiful.
Beautiful.
And his voice sounds stunning on it.
oh gosh,
So
unbelievable.
it's a heartbreaking song.
So
I
yeah, it's one of the my favorite songs I've ever written, and I'm just so proud it's in that show and such a pivotal scene that touched people.
It's
yeah.
it's so nice that there's something about I feel like there's something about the media, the fact that it's in a show, and it's part of a narrative that having the lyrics be like music, about music, as the metaphor within the music is like it kind of works in a different way. It's like about to be what it is or something.
Yeah, and I feel like even though it's sort of there was a thought, is it like too much inside baseball if it's about music? But it just feels like I think people understand that, when they hear those words, I don't hear melodies, I just hear words when you say you love me, and that's why it hurts. I think people have gone through that emotion when, you
Yeah.
know, and it's relatable. So,
Yeah,
uh,
metaphor can speak a lot louder than naming things literally too. But you mentioned that you always had this, you were writing after watching Dawson's Creek. Did all of you guys always want to do TV music? Is that something that was part of the the goal or the idea, the inspiration? And feel free to jump in. We can be conversational here as well.
I mean, I'm always inspired by storylines of TV shows, and there's so, I mean, now with this sort of streaming economy and with Amazon and Netflix and these kind of shows, in these dramas. It feels like there's, at least for someone who's been in the pop business,
Yeah.
with One Direction and Ariana and Weekend and stuff like that, there hasn't been many opportunities for someone like me to, because as I'm not a score guy,
Right.
um, songwriter, so there hasn't really been that many opportunities until recent years where people like me can contribute to a TV show we love, and
Yeah.
that's been a wonderful change, I think.
Yeah.
Man, I think the word in my mind right now, because you said that, was like, I'm not a score guy yet, is what I'm thinking, you know? Because I do think like it's not so much about ambition, but uh but dreaming about the possibility, because it's really a skill. Like, you get this skill by doing it. You get thrown into it, and people like Phineas are doing it, and they're songwriters first, right? And I think the gift that you have um is, and you said it beautifully. It's like, like, I sing and I'm a singer and I get other, that's sort of the idea. No matter what the skill set is, it's that intent of storytelling. That thing you said about Dawson's Creek, that's just a matter of just working towards it. And I do think that the opportunities are going to continue to present themselves, probably. Sorry, I sound like I'm the interviewer. Sorry, I just
No,
got excited hearing
you're a
you say that.
songwriter too. Yeah, you're a songwriter too in this. So you have, in Hacks, you have multiple perspectives.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's not the same thing at all. Like, in a way, because it's not like for me, I've actually been lucky to write songs like
yeah.
for movies. I've been doing it now, just sort of a little bit. And I came from being in rock bands, coming up,
Mm,
and we got signed to Universal Records, and we got dropped from Universal Records. That whole journey.
Yeah.
But then but classical music became the thing I fell in love with, and that sort of, my tool set is really strong with orchestral writing and all that. But it's not any different than someone that has just a good melody in their head and an understanding of story. I think the job is really about knowing when to come in elegantly and get out elegantly. And
yeah,
the best ones are when you watch your favorite movie. I dare anybody to watch that may be watching this to watch your favorite movie, especially if you want to do this, and get like a notepad out or whatever and write down when the music comes in and when it goes out. And you're going to find that you won't know. Like, you'll be like, damn, I got to rewind because it's already in there.
yeah,
And because it's so elegantly done. That's the
yeah,
skill, man. That's the trick. And that's just a matter of time, but that sort of thing of writing, songwriting, I think, is the core, the gift of, I'm a big fan, Savan, just so you know, like, of that sort of principle and what you do and what you get to do. It's just, it's really incredible that someone could say so much in such a little amount of time, you know?
and Pierre, how about you? Did you said that piano is your main instrument. Were you songwriting into score or?
Oh man, I wish I wish I was a songwriter. I like John's abilities with that because I think I mean I came from the jazz world. I mean I went to school
Cool.
for jazz piano.
Yeah,
Got my master's in jazz. But I grew up on film scores. In particular I grew up on scores for musicals like South Pacific and Fiddler on the Roof.
right.
Uh, Sound of Music, and then that was like the road trip inspiration. Like that's what my family was always playing on the cassette tapes in the
Yeah,
car. And then at home, my dad was always playing, like while he's working out or whatever, he was playing the Preservation Hall jazz band records, and a lot of New
Nice.
Orleans trad jazz because he's from New Orleans. And so I always
mhm,
grew up with this like this sort of like just I grew up with like two worlds of music always playing, and in addition to that was always like the Bachs and the Haydns that my dad would quiz me and my sister on as little kids growing up. Who wrote this piece, and we'd have to like quiz. We'd have to have a quiz on like what the sounds of the Baroque era sounded like, and what the sounds of the classical era, all the way up
What
until
a
like
dad.
yeah,
that's cool.
he really challenged us, and I think
That's
just that
cool.
atmosphere and that environment really, even though I wasn't, I didn't come out like I didn't grow up as a kid as a film composer, and I barely like paid attention to film scores up until a certain point. I think I was really thrown into an environment that was all about, just uh, storytelling through music through those other mediums. Because with jazz, you're telling a story,
Hmm.
and especially as a composer, I think when I'm handed a piece of film and there's just this blank slate, and I have like a very tight amount of time to get that
Yeah,
score done. I really fall back on my jazz roots, not in a musical sense, but just in the sense of uh, telling a story through melody on the spot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because what we do as composers and songwriters is we're just improvising. Like we're creating something that wasn't there before, and we're bringing it to into a medium. And for us, that medium is the screen rather than the bandstand. But it's all about like jazz is a conversation, and a lot of times classical music is a conversation, especially in if you listen to a concerto, like there's always a conversation happening among those instruments and those players. And as film composers, I feel like it's our job to have a musical conversation with those characters, as if we're developing a character ourselves that's going to, not be necessarily on screen, but playing through the screen.
Yeah.
So, I think, I think songwriting could be the next frontier, but for now, I'm just an instrumentalist.
Well, I was thinking like something that Savans said about you wrote the song for the characters in the screen, but you're going through the same thing
Yeah.
yourself. And
Yeah.
I feel like, that's a thing that we know. We know that we have that as audience to songwriters. We want to
That's
hear
true.
the songwriter's story. But for Carlos and Pierre, do you have that experience too of like, just meeting, in the process of scoring that you're just like, I'm scoring my own life here too,
As well.
as well. Like the thing that's happening to me, do you ever have those moments?
I, if I may say that I think like for me the assignment I was given for this show was like for a season for this last season the first episode there's a song called Mis Figuritas, which is a Tejano song.
Mhm.
And I think I'm pretty much what's really interesting, I think if looking back on how I've approached this, I approach this very much like a craft. I approach it like a artisan, if you want to say, but I don't ever think of it as art. And it's kind of upsetting to some people because they're like everyone's an artist. If you're creative, you're an artist. But I think you just get good at the thing you do. You choose your path. And there are a few art people that are what they make, but I've really grown to learn that I am not my work.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
if I'm not doing this interview, if I'm not working on something, I'm playing Zelda,
Yeah.
hardcore. I'm playing video games. I'm not
I love
like
Zelda.
just, yeah, but I'm not sitting and thinking, oh, the thing. And so I always think of it, and I tell my students at the Frost School, I'm like, writing is research. And so if you get, I think the lucky thing that happened with Savant is like that you happen to be, like you said, stars aligned. You happen to literally be in the perfect simpatico moment where a song came that you happen to relate to, and boom, it just came out. But I think most to 90% of the work I've had, and that's happened to me maybe occasionally in a moment, but 90% of the work is just here's the assignment and do it. And so this Tejano song was like I had to research the category. And I ended up working with a producer called Aureo Baqueiro, who's won Grammys because I didn't want to screw it up. I was like, I want to always honor the cat because this Deborah Vance is supposed to sing a song that because she wants to get the EGOT before she dies. So she wants the Grammy, and she knows the one category that's been not very looked over that is low in quality this year is the Tejano category. And I was like, bro, this is crazy. And so I'm not going to let it be low in category. So I wrote the song, but I wrote the song based on, doing a lot of research, listening to a lot of the music. And I went to somebody, this producer I know, Sebastian Chris, from that world. I really love and respect. And then I called him, was like, bro. And he's like, don't call me bro. I said, dude, can you hook me up with somebody? And he hooked me up with audio, and I got to meet. We went off, and then we wrote the song. Like I wrote the song, but he ended up producing it. We talked about the arrangement, what should be instrumentalists. He brought them all in. We even got the actress Jean Smart to sing. So in the episode, she comes out and singing, and that bit. But the idea was to be or go after a song that could actually be nominated for that category. That was the goal, and I feel very if that more importantly, what the showrunners really wanted is for something to be funny, and it had to work, but it couldn't just be funny because it ends up being condescendent to the category. It makes fun,
Right.
and I didn't want that to be the case. My gig was to make sure I'm serving the category and doing right by it.
Yeah.
But I do think that in itself is a very different version of the same journey that you were talking about because you're just trying to get this whole thing, but it's assignment. And I learned about something that I wasn't as familiar with. And I think that's the best part about our job. Wouldn't you guys say? Like you kind of
Yeah.
get immersed in this and all of a sudden you just got to go. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, like the research. It's almost, you know, similar concept as an actor researching a role, and you kind of have to just get under the skin of something, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
if you're not going, there's been times I've worked with artists who are going through something I've never gone through, but I have to somehow find a way to help their voice. And I think
Yep.
that's why there's, you know, I think creative people have so much empathy in a sense because we have to be able to get under the skin and put our feet into someone else's shoes or a situation's shoes. And it's sort of, I always call it method writing, you know, instead of like method acting. Like,
Oh,
you
dude,
know,
that's great.
so like if I know I need to go in and do a certain type of thing, and if it's nothing that I can reach inside myself, I'll watch a film or a TV show that sort of deals with that or that emotion. And I always watch movies by myself or these kind of TV shows by myself, like especially when they're emotional, so I can stay in the moment and then just record whatever comes to me in that feeling and that emotion, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's a combination of those things, the craft side, and then sometimes it's personal and you can find the truth in it in yourself, you know.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's words too that you have to actually, draw on. You have to be able to put a language, like a literal, language, as well as a language of music with songwriting. So
Yeah,
that
and
Yeah.
I think
method, method writing.
yeah, they feel like the stuff I've done in film, like, you know, it's always been, you know, when I've had to write songs for film, it's always, yeah, put yourself in the character's shoes. Like, I always want to read the script first and I want to know how they speak. Just like I wouldn't, you know, at this point in my career, work with an artist or write for an artist unless I've met them. So I really know what
Mhm.
their what their language is,
Mhm.
both lyrically and like melodically. And
Mm.
I found that's always been very helpful.
And when you were working, Pierre, did because you talked about Savan, the natural kind of way this came to you, and Carlos, there's this evolution there. But Pierre, I'm wondering, like, did you have to mess around a lot in the sandbox, before you discovered, or was it, something that you automatically heard when you thought of the idea?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, really, I feel like with most projects that I do, there's a bit of that, you know, sort of just experimenting and exploration before you actually land on something.
Yeah.
Uh, I originally thought that we were gonna go in this very like sort of like classical. I thought there was gonna be like this classical music like superimposed on the Diddy story, and I thought that was gonna be the direction that we went. And you know, then the editors and Alex were like, not really like classical, but like they, you know, they kind of just throw ideas and words at you. And it's like not really classical, but like think of like classical music like meets a circus and then meets like, you know, like a fun house and then meets, you know, like tension and eerie, like sinister vibes. And you know, it was a lot. And you know, I think our job is as composers is to be professional interpreters
Yeah.
of pieces and in concepts that may not even be musical at all, but always have like you know, they always find their way to a musical point. Um, and so like they, you know, yeah, when you get a bunch of when I went to the studio, for example, to the percussionist studio to just record a bunch of stuff, you know, I didn't know where these takes were going to end up, and you know, we recorded everything from like loops that I ended up just you know using straight up into into cues. Like we would set up a BPM and just start like I was like it was like I had my own like digital audio workstation in this guy's studio just in real life because just set up a loop, like set up a BPM, and then start recording different instruments. And sometimes those whole loops made it into a cue, and then other times I'm just like chopping up some random thing that he recorded, and you know, putting it in reverse, and then like you know, putting it through a bunch of processing and creating a whole instrument out of it. And same with the flutes. Like sometimes you'll hear in the score, there's the actual take of her playing a flute line, and then other times it's what you may think is like a synthesizer. It's actually her flute, just single notes sampled throughout. And I turned it into a synthesizer. And I think all this kind of really just kept evolving all the way into the last cue of the series. And I felt like once I got to the fourth episode, I was like, man, I feel like now I want four more episodes because now I know what the score is supposed to sound like.
Yeah, dude.
Which I feel like is
Bars.
happening all the time in our projects.
Yeah,
It's you get to the last
yeah,
episode or the last reel, and we're like, wait, I wish I knew what to do like when I first started this project, and now
yeah.
I want to go back, start changing some things and all that. So it's an evolution for sure.
But I
And
guess,
it's like, oh, sorry, I
sorry.
was gonna ask, sorry, I'm not the interviewer, I know, but I was gonna ask a question
Yeah,
about that project
yeah.
because it's such a heavy subject.
Mm.
Was there like sort of, did you feel like a pressure to sort of, because obviously music tells so much of the story. Was there like, how heavy do we make the music? How light do we, was that sort of in discussion out of curiosity? Because you did such a great job to like support that
Yeah, I
scene.
mean, I kind of like what you said about method writing because I feel like, just in the way I've sort of been trained as a composer. I mean, I worked for, one of the, best in the biz, Chris Bowers, and when I worked for him years ago, I really developed that sort of obsessive attention to uh, dialogue and character detail that throws you into the world of method writing. And I thought there were points in this project where obviously we know what Sean Combs did, and we know all the horrendous things they did to his victims. But there's also like as a composer, you also have to um, accent his own inner psyche and like in a way that almost makes you empathize with you know his upbringing and like things the trauma that he had to endure as a child. Um,
Mm.
and it's interesting because it's as composers like you have to be nuanced 150% of the time. It's not just creating this dark, heavy true crime. Netflix categorizes this as true crime, I believe. And it's a true story about crimes that happened, but it's also in a way sort of like a biopic.
Yeah,
And
that's
we have our antagonist is also the protagonist at the same time, and
yeah,
be nuanced with the way we score his moments, especially when him and his closest friends are recounting stories of their childhood where Sean Combs was thrown into situations that no children should have to be thrown into.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's moments that are light, there's moments that are more empathetic, there's moments that are obviously really tense and dark, especially when we hear the victims' testimonials and we hear recounts of things that we've never heard before. Obviously, I wanted to highlight and pay respect to the gravity of those stories. But I think again, I think Alex is such a genius in the way that she tells stories because she's not very leading in the way she produces a docu series. Like she's not, she really it felt like a expose on journalism in a way. Like it was journalism done well.
Mm.
The way she has these twists and turns and the way she's able to like structure his story around not just like we're going to go from point A to point B, but we're going to maybe start here and point like if it's A to Z, we're going to maybe start here at like letter Y and then go jump back to letter C, and then everything sort of pieces itself together. And as a composer, I have to be able to make those shifts and make the story not make the score not sound so linear, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Were you, Carlos, and Savan given like very specific direction, or were you the one that kind of did the interpreting for your series in terms of the palette and the instrumentation? I know you were given some, Carlos, but in general.
Mm. Maybe Savan first. I'd like to see how you what the if there was directive, how that went.
There wasn't much. They really wanted something that they felt could sort of be a song that works outside the series as well. I know that, but I'm such a fan of those type of shows, of the sort of rom-commy kind of
Yeah.
Yeah,
show. In my mind, shows like This Is Us and all of those kind of things, like I was like, oh, like having studied those shows and the songs in those shows and discovered so many, so I kind of had an instinct, of what it should be, and luckily myself and my collaborators, we got it there, and they loved it. That was kind of what was great, was there was we again stars aligned where there was no like, go, can you do this? Can you train? They were like, great. Listen to the scene. We already cut it into the scene. I was like, wow, okay.
That's so
Um,
great, man. That's a
I was like,
unicorn,
yeah,
sir.
I
that
know.
was
I was
very,
going to say,
very.
I don't think I've ever heard an answer like that.
Yeah, I've never had that experience before. It was cool. Um, but but yeah, I think we got sort of we just lucky on that. And again,
Together.
knowing those types of shows and loving those kind of shows, I think helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think rom-coms are ideally coming back. You know, they seem like they went away for a while, but the idea or concept, even cinematically, is starting to hope be made. You know, there was a whole thing about them, especially in the '90s and 2000s. They were like a thing. And
Yeah. I feel like there's
but
a new type as well that's coming through from these sort of psychological vulnerability perspectives. Like,
Mhm.
you know, shows like Ted Lasso and stuff like that have just
Yeah, definitely.
opened up these new spaces for
Mm.
human vulnerability and yeah. And you're a crafts person, Carlos, so you know, I'm sure like working with the showrunners and I'm
Hmm.
guessing that there's a bit of both perspectives when it comes to, you know,
Yeah.
the inspiration of the palette.
It's weird. I think you get hired. That was one of those gigs. Hacks was a job that I got that I didn't know why they hired me. Like when I had the meeting, it may have been the worst meeting ever. And if you start going on these meetings and Zooms, and I've been lucky enough to have them in the first place, and you have several, and you start going through years of having meetings, it's like I can honestly say that if I've had students ask me, so what do you do when you have a meeting, or how do you do? I was like, dude, I have no idea. Good luck, because there is no actual way of. I've had amazing meetings where I haven't gotten the job. I've had
Yeah,
horrible meetings and I've gotten the job. And I've had both on the up work, vice versa. It's like it's not. There's no one thing that I can say. I've noticed this, and I do honestly think a lot of this work comes down to chemistry. I
yeah,
think when you get with a showrunner or get with a director, there is a chemical aspect here, and just like when you work with artists or when you work with anybody, you either have it or it's just not going to work. And no matter what happens, it's just not happening. And I think that's kind of you have to be open to that going into these jobs. It's like the best day in my experience so far has been like when I get the job, it feels like I got this girl's number and I was 14 and I was like, dude, I can't wait to get home. And oh my God, what are we going to talk about? And do I call her? That's what it feels like when I get the job.
Yeah.
And then everything else in between is a blur until the last day, until it's done.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my God, I got through with the job, and I survived it because it is just such a journey. And there are things within it. In 5 years, these are very specific showrunners. They know what they want, and I can honestly say that they are people that I never knew what they would approve or not.
yeah,
And yet, and that's where I always felt like I said, I didn't know why I got hired. I remember in the meeting, it was like Vegas, they kept saying Vegas. They were mentioning Succession, Pierre. They were saying, oh, we love Succession. And I was like, and I get it because there's a power play going on through hacks and stuff. And
Yeah.
everybody loved that. That Bertel score was stupid, dude. What a great piece of music, dude. And it was like, and I was like, and I kept thinking jazz, and jazz is not my background. They could have called you and probably done better with Deborah Vance. And I was like, I don't know what I kept telling him, I don't know what I would do for Deborah. I have no idea. I kept saying, I have no idea what I do, which is not what you're supposed to say, dude. Everybody's trained to say, I got this, no problem. I can do it. I think I know what to do. And and I think they put a trust in me that maybe had been undeserved, but I grew through it, and going through this process really has made me a better composer, there's no doubt. And I think that's why this is the kind of job that you don't get old in. Because in pop, you once you're 30, you're like either the manager or you're not going to get on stage. And if you're a composer and you're open, you can always work because you're always getting a new challenge and a new thing to figure out. And there's this sort of thing. And I'm 55 now. I've been doing this for a while, and it's like it's the best experience in the world. So that kind of challenge, and you do objectively, I guess to finish the thought is like knowing when you know that you're not aware of what's working for them, you just keep showing up and you go to version 27 And when they say yes to that, you're like, okay, I guess that's the one. I didn't feel like I learned. I just walk away knowing I don't know. But when I watch the episode, I'm like, damn, they're so right, dude.
They're
How
always
do
right.
they? They're
Always right.
always right. They are correct. And and that's why it's a collaboration. That's why 1 and 1 is 3 when it's about it. So it's long answer, sorry, but that's what I was thinking about.
No, I mean, I think that that's a really, good answer to tie up the entire subject of composing and songwriting for television, which is collaboration being the most important part of it, because I guess even from the musical perspective, you are kind of walking blind with half of the picture until
Hmm.
you meet in the middle, and not knowing whether it's going to work, or it is going to work or it's not going to work. It's a scary medium, and it's one that you're always kind of subject to somebody else, um, or for approval and for things to fit and to know that we hit it, we got it. You have to have that as a collaborative experience. It's a
I wonder if that answer that you gave, like, I don't know what her theme, I don't know what I'm writing, what theme
Hmm.
I'm wondering if that vulnerability is the thing that got you the job, like that
yeah.
maybe, that they were like, this is someone that I can work with, someone that's willing to
Well,
kind of go to that
I,
vulnerable place of like, yeah, we're figuring this out together.
I think I'm getting hired more now for assurance or insurance in a certain way. I've been lucky to get to the point where they call because they go, well, we don't have to worry about the music. We're going to go. We have other because when there is production, there is so much to worry about.
Mm.
But the truth is, I also find that balance. There's a couple of things here, and it's just that you you want to show you were talking about getting approval. Our job is to submit for approval, but our job is also not to be less than. We have to lurk and try to put ourselves in a position of collaborator as opposed to please approve, because then that's a different psychology and it creates a dynamic that's actually not healthy on either side.
Yeah.
And I've been in that before. When I was in a rock band, I wanted the producer to love me. I wanted the producer to approve of everything I came up with. I went through a lot, and I'm sure you guys have dealt with in some version of that. And I've learned through a very long process that that's not what's gonna help. Being open that you don't know, I think being yourself, and it's the weirdest thing to say, but the truth is you just have to be who you are and say the thing you're thinking in that moment, and you get better at it as you go along. This is a work in progress. There's no mountain of Olympus or whatever that you're always figuring it out, and you're going to have these experiences where you have to kind of just show up and show the thing and it doesn't work, well, let's try another one. But I think it's kind of bullshit to show up and say, yeah, and I have a vision. And that's the other thing when you have these meetings, I know what to do. Sometimes you do feel passionate about it, you go in and say the thing you're feeling. But I'd rather have a conversation of saying, dude, talk is cheap, man. I'd rather let me send you some stuff. If you don't like it, it's fine. If you like it, like, well, great, then we move on,
Yeah.
because nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody has a vision of it. Sometimes you cast them and it's the wrong actor, and you got to cast the wrong actor, and off you go. And here now we have to make it, or the editor is not working, or there's a lot of parts. And as long as you know you're part of this whole, that you're hopefully contributing to that, then that's a great thing. Your ego usually tends to be the biggest thing that gets in the way of making great stuff. Your own insecurity, how you process a rejection, how you process a revision. It's about just, dude, okay, show up. That's all. Anyways, I've talked too much.
No.
I totally agree with that. That's it. I mean, collaboration is so key to this. It's same thing in the pop music game. It's no ego and just collaboration and be willing to listen. Um,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Anything to add about collaboration to that, Pierre?
I mean, you guys said it so eloquently. I mean,
You
I
did.
think Carlos is right. It's like we're all just, in this process of filmmaking, we're all just human beings putting ourselves out there, and we're all just, yeah, just opening the door to subjectivity, and there's if you go into the music part of this filmmaking process with that mindset, like, hey, like, I'm one part of this entire work of art. we're the craftsmen. We're not like the art is the actual production itself. And then
Yeah.
every person that is every filmmaker that is working on that production, whether it be the cinematographer, the editors, the composer, producers, the director, we're all filmmakers who are making a piece of art together. And so you have to kind of go into that process with an open mind and be able to take feedback. And this is why I tell people, I mentor young composers that reach out and they're like, how do I navigate this career? That's one of the first things I say is you are getting out of your own way in service of the way, because the way and the truth is like what that film is meant to be doing to its audience, what that film is serving for the world, or the show or the documentary, whatever, or the song, whatever it may be. It's about getting out of your own way, being a team player, and using your artistic mind to craft what is going to be a very important part of a full artistic piece. But I also just ditto what Savan and Carlos said too.
Amazing. Wow.
I think that's a great place to finish. I feel like the subtitle of this could be "Get Out of Your Way for the Way," or be the method writer. I don't know. Something.
little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Anyway, thank you guys.
Thank
This
you
was
guys
a great
so much.
conversation. And,
yeah, this was
thanks for
fantastic.
joining us.
Yes, and thanks for all your work and all you do. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having
Real
us.
cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.